Sometimes love isn't enough. As an adoptive mom, people would often say this to me, as if to imply I couldn't love my son enough to change behaviors or heal his trauma, so I should probably just give up. At least that's how I took those four powerful words, which had buried themselves deeply in my mind, leading me to doubt my ability to parent my child. Sometimes love isn't enough. That is the truth. Oftentimes, you need love and powerful, personalized tools to raise a child who's experienced trauma and disrupted attachment, or a child who you're struggling to connect with. I am on a mission to help parents raising kids with a tricky past to show up with unconditional love and practical tools to lovingly manage even the most challenging of times. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Plus, if you like what you hear, I'd love for you to leave a review. Now let's get to the good stuff. Welcome back to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. I'm Angie, and I am your host for this podcast that I hope that you are really finding powerful, practical tools that you can use to start shifting your relationships with your kiddos and maybe even other people in your life, but also to show up differently for your kids. Because if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you want to do what's best for your family. And chances are you feel like you're missing the mark. I know that's where I was, and really what led me to helping parents and really creating this podcast for you, because I wanted to make sure that what I was learning through my studying, learning about myself, but also learning as I work with parents, I wanted to make sure that I was sharing it with more and more people because it's powerful in the way that it can shift the way that you show up for your family. So let's jump into today's episode, which is all about how our kids' unmet needs can lead to behaviors. So we know that our child's physiological needs can lead to behaviors, right? If our kids are tired, they're cranky. If our kids are hungry, they're hangry. If they're hurt or sad, right? Our kids can really struggle when their physiological needs aren't met. We know that. And I say that that's easy. That's kind of the simple one. But I know as parents, oftentimes we even miss that, right? Our kids will be acting out and we jump right into targeting the behaviors themselves without taking a step back and really reflecting on, have I met all of their physiological needs? So that's the first step. Let's always make sure that we're doing that. Make sure our kids are well fed, make sure their bellies are full, make sure that they've had plenty of good rest where they feel really well rested. That stuff's easy. Make sure they have plenty of water to drink, all the things that their body needs. But in this episode, I want to talk about some other things that I had attended a recent training with uh, an expert in human design, and the training was all about behaviors. And so there were some nuggets in there that I felt just so compelled to share with all of you so that you can really start thinking differently about your kids' behaviors and what's happening in your home, and perhaps make a checklist for yourself to run through when your kids are falling apart, having a meltdown, lashing out, misbehaving, whatever it might be. So, the first one that I actually want to talk about is asking yourself this question: does my child feel lovable? It's a really powerful question, right? When we think about being caught up in the moment with our kids, when we think about how, I don't know, you walk in and your child has emptied all of the products in the bathroom into the sink, into the bathtub, into the toilet, in on the floor, on the walls, right? You walk into that moment where your reaction is to maybe yell, maybe give them a consequence, maybe remove a privilege, maybe something else, right? We as parents are so conditioned to think that our kids need some type of reaction when they've misbehaved. It's our job to teach them that they did wrong, right? But when we take a step back and ask ourselves that question about Does my child feel lovable right now? Would it change the way that you react to what they're doing? Would it change what you say, what you do, the energy that you have in the moment? I know when I reflect back and I try to not be hard on myself because I was doing the very best that I could with the tools that I had. But the tools that I had in my tool bag, which man, I had a lot of them, but the tools that I had in my tool bag weren't designed to not only tap into my unique energy and the way that I am as a parent, but also my son's unique needs. And the tools that I had in my tool belt um, weren't this explicit about addressing behaviors, right? Most of the tools in my tool bag were look at the function of the behavior. Why is he doing what he's doing? Is he looking for attention? Is he looking to get out of something? Is he looking to get access to something? So there were some key functions to behaviors that I was trained to look at, but never once was I asked that question, right? Perhaps the behavior happened because he didn't feel so lovable. Perhaps there were things that I was doing or saying that made it so that he wasn't feeling like he was capable of love or deserving of love. And perhaps it wasn't even things that I was doing. Perhaps that's um, part of his makeup because what he had been through prior to me even meeting him. When I really reflect on that question about on a day-to-day basis or in the thick of the moments when things were so hard, did he feel lovable? I can say, I don't know that he did. I don't know that he really felt like he was deserving of love, that he was getting enough love. I think back to some of the words that he would say, where, oftentimes our kiddos who have experienced a disrupted placement, who are in a home that wasn't their original home, a family that wasn't their original family, oftentimes our kids who've been through tricky times like that will question whether or not they belong, question whether or not they fit into the family or that they're supposed to be there. And I know that those are words that I heard often. So if I'm being really honest, and I had to ask myself back then, when he was younger and things were so hard, does he feel lovable? I would probably say I don't think so most of the time. And it makes me sad to say that. And I hope this isn't too horribly triggering for you. I am being very raw and honest here because I want it to change the way that you approach things in your family if that's what your kiddos need from you. So ask yourself that question. And if the answer is no, that my kiddo is not feeling very lovable, well, then perhaps you don't need to react to that behavior. Perhaps you don't need a consequence. Perhaps instead, the approach is to focus on regaining that sense of feeling lovable. Perhaps that's where we start, right? So that's one thing that I really wanted to pick out of this recent training that I attended. There are a couple of others that I also wanted to address as things that I feel are core needs that our kiddos have. And when these needs go unmet, when our kids feel like these things aren't met, that perhaps is where some of these behaviors come from. Maybe they're not trying to access something or they're not trying to get out of something. Perhaps they're feeling that they can't be their authentic self. That's another one that came up in this training that I know for myself, as I'm studying more and more and more about my human design, I feel like that's where I'm feeling the biggest tension in myself is the more that I realize how conditioned I've been to think that my life is supposed to follow a certain path, the more that I realize that perhaps I've been doing things in my life to please others, to make other people happy or proud of me, or I don't know, so that I could fit in, not create waves. I hate friction. Perhaps there are things about myself that I have been doing that aren't my authentic self. But the same is true for our kids. Our kids know deep inside who they are. They don't have words for it. I mean, my gosh, as a grown woman, I don't sometimes have words for it or I'm learning words for it. But when we think about our kids, for example, I've been learning a ton about the projector type when in studying human design. And both of my kids are projectors, and I am not. I'm a generator. I like to go, 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 do, 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 get all the things done. I have a never-ending to-do list. I am always busy working on something. I struggle to rest. I struggle to create silence in my life. That's something that I'm working on. But imagine being a projector child who isn't designed to go, 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 do, do, do. In fact, projectors really struggle with their own energy. They don't have a consistent source of energy. So imagine what it's like for a projector child who's raised by a parent who has this drive to go, 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 but they don't have that innate drive. And how they must feel like they don't fit in or they're broken or that they're not doing something right. Our kids know who they are at their core, they just don't have words for it. And so imagine being a kiddo who doesn't have consistent access to energy, might be open to other people's emotions or, their willpower, whatever it might be. And they're surrounded by people who do have consistent energy. Imagine how that could lead to behaviors. Our kids who feel like they're exhausted, like they can't get the same kinds of things done that's expected of them or that they see happening around them. Imagine how that could lead to behavior problems. That's just one example. But when our kids can't don't feel like they're being their authentic selves, don't feel like they can really um, be themselves, or they're trying so hard to please others, I really strongly feel like it really can lead to some really challenging behaviors. So that's the second one I wanted to talk about. The first one being lovable. The second one is being authentic to yourself. And the third one that I want to talk about, and we're going to keep this episode relatively short, but the third thing I wanted to talk about was understanding their emotions. When we think about kids just developmentally, right? I'm experiencing everyday toddlerhood at work, at home, and toddlers do not understand their own emotions. They feel big, big, scary emotions, and they don't know what to do with it. So imagine how scary that must feel when our toddler, who might grow into be a young child and even an adolescent, feels scared or alone or confused or sad or angry. And perhaps they haven't had models to show them what to do with those emotions, or perhaps they just feel so uncomfortable with those emotions. Or are kids who are receptive to other people's emotions, they feel other people's emotions. Imagine how challenging that can be. You think about a kiddo who perhaps they don't have their own consistent emotional waves, but they're really receptive to others. We know that some of us are really empathetic and an empath where we can really feel other people's feelings, and some of us are not. But imagine what that's like for a young child who, in one moment, might feel fine, but then maybe a parent walks into the room who's feeling angry. And suddenly, that young child or even adolescent feels those feelings as if they're their own. Or on the flip side, then maybe somebody else walks in the room and they're feeling amazing and they have this high vibration to them. And then all of a sudden, that child feels great and they have the swing up and down, and they don't know what to do with those feelings. So again, imagine how challenging it can be for our kiddos when they don't understand their emotions. They don't know how to be their authentic selves, and perhaps they don't feel lovable. That's what I want to leave you with today is to really take inventory. When your kids are misbehaving, or even when they're not, really take take a moment, take 10 moments, whatever you need, and really reflect on what's happening with your kids. Ask yourself those key questions about, does my child feel lovable? Does my child feel like they're free to be who they're supposed to be? Or am I putting my expectations on them to be a certain way, to match me, to um, respond to the world the way that I do. And of course, it's a fine balance, right? We want to teach our kids and expose them to the world, but we do not want to teach our kids to be us because they're not. They're their unique selves. And that's our role. Our role is to really teach our kids to be who they're supposed to be, not to be who I am. Because quite frankly, I don't know if I've figured out who I am. And then finally, helping our kids to understand emotions and to really ask yourself that question. Does my kiddo really understand the emotions that they're feeling? And what can I do to help them better understand? When we think about our kids who've been through traumatic experiences, who've been through disrupted placement, I know my experience and what I was told to do was to kind of tap into that higher level thinking, right? To um, use words to help my son better understand and navigate why his life was the way that it is. But those things come with really big emotions that he probably didn't know what to do with. And so it came out in all kinds of not so great ways in our family. So ask yourself, does your child understand their emotions and do they know what to do about it? Do they feel like they can just be themselves, whatever that may be? And do they feel lovable? So I hope that you found this short and sweet episode powerful for you. And I would love to hear your feedback about what changes you're making in your family to really shift things at home. Take care. Talk soon. I hope that you found this episode so incredibly powerful. Thank you for joining us for Sometimes Love Isn't Enough. If you resonated with what you heard here, please subscribe to this podcast and give us a review. You can also follow us on all the socials. Check the show notes for all the details about how to start tackling behaviors and creating a powerful, loving relationship with your child, a child who needs your love the most. And if your gut's telling you that it's time for a change now, book a free consult. I'd love to help you love unconditionally and show you that you have that power within you.